It's for a demonstration.
But the only way really to be close enough to see a lot of these things is to actually wash your bike. So you're getting a dual purpose here. A, you're getting bike inspection and bike cleaning at the same time. These are huge investments. And so to think that you don't need to clean this would be kind of silly. So one of the maintenance things that we'll start off doing first, and I'll have Zach show this, is say your bike is dirty like this one came in, and you're not going to spend the time to wash it tonight. You know you're going to ride tomorrow. One thing that should never go undone is exactly what Spencer was talking about, is drivetrain maintenance. So if all you did when you got home is just to do what Zach's doing right now, this is a dry rag first. He's just wiping the chain off with the, first he just used a dry rag. Secondly, he put a little bit of lubricant on the rag, and he's just cleaning off all of that debris around the chain. And then right now he's down on the little jockey wheels on the rear derailleur. And that alone goes a long way to maintain your drivetrain. If when your bike is relatively clean, you're not riding in inclement weather, I would recommend leaving the rag and some sort of lubricant right where you store your bike. I'm in the habit of every time I ride, I do that every single time I ride. And I do it when I get home. So then when you get your bike off the rack, you're ready to roll. That lube, whatever you put on there, is now dry, it's not wet, it's not adhering all of the dirt and grime that's on the road, and it's also done when you're done. And so that's the best time to do that. The second thing before you go on, the other thing to do is once you're done with your ride, one thing that really helps longevity with derailleur, lifetime maintenance, is to always store your bike in the lowest gear, both front and rear derailleur. So what this is doing is just taking all the spring tension off of both front and rear derailleur. So if a lot of people are ending their ride in the front, in the big ring in the front, and big ring in the back. That's like the worst possible combination to store your bike. You want to be small ring, and I would do that always. So those are the two things to start with storage and bike maintenance. So as far as the wash goes, things that you need, and this doesn't need to be a daily thing, and this could really be more of a 5 or 10 minute wash. But if you're going to do it inside on a crappy day like this, it's easy to still wash your bike inside. You don't need, this isn't going to make a huge mess, but you need 2 buckets. One is a hot water bucket, one is a cold water bucket. But you need 1 sponge that you're going to use on everything but the drivetrain, and 1 dirty sponge that you use on the drivetrain. So typically before you would start, you would spray the drivetrain down with some sort of degreaser. On the left up here on the table is all the products that can be used. I don't use any of those anymore. I've tried to make it more simple. So I've gone for the simple degreaser. You can use Simple Green, you can use dish soap, you can use a multitude of things. I'm kind of anti-aerosol, so I like the spray-on stuff. And then it's dish soap in your bucket of water. It's very gentle. It's not going to damage your paint. It's fine on carbon. Degreaser stuff, you want to keep that off your carbon frames. That can break it down over time and can void some warranties on some frames. So try to keep the degreaser away from the frame. So typically a good order to start in when you're washing your bike, kind of start from front to back. Work your way all the way from front all the way to back, and then once you've gotten front to back, then you can worry about taking your wheels off and doing your wheels from there. The big things that you want to hit when you're with the wheels on, you want to make sure you're getting the brakes clean, the down tube clean, the underneath side where Zach is right now, that's going to take the majority of all of the dirt and grime. A lot of the older style bikes, that's where your cables are running, and so that's where a lot of dirt and grime builds up, and that's where you want to get that cleaned off. The newer bikes have internal routing, so it's a little less critical. And then once you get the majority of the frame clean, then you're taking the wheels off. Super important that you take the sponge. You're going all the way around the surfaces of the rim. You get a lot of grime build up around the braking surfaces, and especially on these new carbon rims, if you don't clean that off, that just builds up, and then every time you push or pull your brake lever, you're just driving that grime into a carbon surface, and that's going to break down. And so you're just taking that sponge and you're working all the way around the carbon surfaces, and you're giving that a good, some good pressure on there to get that wiped off. After you get those, after you get the surfaces done, then you want to, quick on the spokes. He's already done that, and then a quick little time around the hubs just to keep those clean. Once you get the wheels off, now you can get into the chain stays and the seat stays into that area where you can't get to with the wheels on the bike. So front and back, inside the forks, and then you're really getting into those brake surfaces and getting those cleaned off as well. A little trick, if you don't, he's going to take a little screwdriver here. This is a little technique that you can clean the surfaces of the brake pads themselves. Your brake pads have little grooves in them. Those are there for mainly heat dissipating purposes, but what happens is grime builds up, gets caught in those little grooves and fills those in. So not only do you not get the heat dissipation, but you're also, again, pressing all that grime into the surface of your wheels, and that just wears things out quicker. So he's just taking a small little bladed screwdriver, cleaning those little recesses out, and making sure those are nice and clean. If you don't have a stand, there's a good little trick to hold your bike without flipping it upside down, putting it on your seat. That's sort of the no-go technique. A good technique is to rest it on its fork and on the front hoods, and then just simply lean it up against something. Very little stress to anything in that case. You can actually clean your bike with that method when your wheels are off. So a good little tip there. So basically at this point, you're really done cleaning it, and then it just goes to a quick little rinse. So make sure you have hot water on the wash part. The hot water is going to help with the breakdown of the grease and getting everything off, and then clean sponge, cold water, and basically you're just wiping this down. Some people, Zach and I included, aren't really fastidious about getting all the soap off. In fact, even sometimes at this point, we would even just go to a dry cloth, wipe it down, because what that's doing is leaving a little bit of film, of that soap film, on your frame. That's also repellent. And so soap on your frame is not going to hurt it. It's dish soap. It's not going to break anything down. And so at this point, if you're just wiping this down with a dry cloth, I think it's a lot easier than worrying about doing a big rinse. If you're outside and you have the hose there, then fine. But remember the thing about hose, it's just gentle pressure. Don't take your car or your bike to a car wash. If you are, you need to be standing about from here to Zach away if you're going to be using it. You don't want high pressure and just drilling the drivetrain especially. Anything around the bearings and around the gears, you're going to ruin the bearings with that. And so be careful with car washes. I know it sounds easier and it's quicker, but it's not going to help with the longevity of your bike. So once you get this wiped down adequately, again, soap on there, a little soap residue is not going to hurt anything. Then this is the time to go back to your drivetrain maintenance. You're going to want to first make sure that the chain is fairly dry before you go back to adding anything on there. And a lot of what you use for chain lube is personal preference. If you're in a wet weather climate, then using something with a Teflon or that sort of repellent can be helpful. If you're in sandy conditions, there's waxy kind of lubricants that you can use. But I've kind of run the plethora of stuff, and I've gone with this Pro Gold just because I use it daily. It's a cleaner and it's a lubricant. So you can kind of clean and lubricate all in one step, and if you're doing it frequently, you don't have to worry about getting a big heavy coat on there. Some of these things, the Teflon based ones, they really tend to build up, and so if you're not cleaning that off of there, that's when you get the big fat dark chain that's not really helping you. So you need to get all of that stuff off of there, and if you're just doing this more frequently, your bike's gonna run better, it's gonna last longer, and you're gonna be safer. I mean, we have one guy on our team that essentially never washes his bike. I think I'm the one that washes it at camp every year. And he's had derailleur failure because of all of the Cytomax and drink that's, oozed down to the bottom of the cables and just locked up his bike. So that even just, taking a hose and washing it off would be better than nothing. And so something is better than nothing. This technique that Zach's doing here with the rear cassette is this is sort of maybe a once every 2 months kind of technique, but this is just like a flossing type technique where you're actually getting in between each of the cassette rings and getting all that grease out in between there. That doesn't necessarily need to be done on a daily basis. This is probably something that I find myself doing maybe once every month. But again, that's just going to help the drivetrain keep running smoothly. All these products, of course, you can find them at Backcountry, REI, whatever. But again, I'm down to three products: dish soap, some sort of degreaser. I use Simple Green diluted 50%, and Pro Gold. None of those are super expensive, and they all work very well. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Where does it have to be maintained?
Pardon?
Wheel bearings ever have to be maintained?
Wheel bearings in bikes seldom ever have to be changed. I mean, some of them are sealed and they're not replaceable. Most of them now are maintenance free. Your bottom bracket has a bearing in it that, I've changed them, but they don't need servicing. You can take your front ring off or your front crank off and clean it if you get creaking sounds and things like that. But I would venture to say that if you did what Zach has just done, all those little creaking mountain bike chain kind of sounds go away. All that little creaking stuff just goes away because you're cleaning all that grime off and keeping it clean. Yeah, like.
Barry, how often would you recommend taking your bike in for service at like a local shop?
Well, I mean, I think it's, depends on how much you ride, but I think every season to start, for sure, I think, needs a tune-up. For several reasons, just like Zach pointed out, it's not just the brakes or the shifters, it's the tires, it's your seat, it's checking all those bolts to make sure that something doesn't come loose. I've seen people riding the first part of the year and all of a sudden the handlebar just kind of slips down. The temperature changes can affect the tightness of things, and so I would say for sure you need to do that to begin every season. Have your bike a decent tune-up. If you don't feel comfortable, you need to take it into your shop. Anything else?
Sorry, just one more question. Recommended PSI. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all starting to back off the maximum PSI thing, realizing that tires are being manufactured better. We always thought that, you know, maximum pressure meant no flats. But I would venture to say that most of us now are riding most tires at around 100 PSI. I know I've gone from 120 down to 100, and I think the ride quality is much better. It's much less harsh, and I'm not seeing differences in flats. Any other questions? Yeah.
On carbon fiber frames, what is it like after 5 or 6 years? Do they fail, or I mean, what's a good judge on when you need a new bike?
I think that we were all worried about carbon when it first came out, myself included, and I think that we are very confident with carbon frames for a long, long time. Geez, I have a carbon frame that's probably got 35,000 miles on it, and I'm not too worried about it. Again, you're going to see stress fractures, little cracks, things like that if you're having problems. There are 2 bike manufacturers that still lifetime warranty carbon frames. Not too many people do that anymore, but I think for average person, I don't think you're going to have to worry about it breaking down. I think if you have any sort of frontal impact kind of thing happen to you, you for sure should have your bike inspected at shop. This happened to me. I had no idea. I had a little frontal impact, and I didn't think anything had happened. And about 9 months later, I had it into a shop, and my frame had cracked. And this was on an aluminum bike that I had.